Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Hangry Mexican. When the tough gets going, she always has a smile on her face. She's a very talented journalist, and she's had quite a journey to get to where she is today. I'm really proud to present this interview with a good friend of mine, Alex Biston. Now, she works a lot, and sometimes it's a little hard to get folks in the studio to chat. So I decided I should go to her. So we set up a date for the interview, and we met in Santa Monica at the Cheesecake Factory. So you will probably hear some of the background noise, and that's what's happening. So we're doing a live interview at the Cheesecake Factory, one of my favorite places, and we talk about a different variety of things, including her upbringing and how she got to where she is today. All right, well, without further ado, let's get started. So DJ, roll that music. The podcast is supposed to be super chill, so that's why we're here dining at the Cheesecake Factory
in Santa Monica.
Which I love. But Alex, thank you for being on my podcast.
Well, I felt very flattered that you would ask me to be on a podcast. So
of course.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, I mean, you got a really interesting take on, you're obviously a reporter, you've been doing it for a while, but you got an interesting journey getting to where you are now. Obviously the creme of the creme.
And yes, interesting, I guess you could say.
Well, did you always know you wanted to be a reporter when you were a little kid?
Always known, probably since I was in middle school. I remember watching, the news. I always watched news. I just was interested with how it was put together. I never understood how it was put together, but I always wanted to know. So when I was in high school, I started on the school newspaper and learned print journalism and how that worked to put an article together. And the first time I saw my name published in the newspaper, I got giddy. I got excited. And I was one of those really nerdy kids that would, like, whenever I would see a news van, I would get excited and, like, my heart would start racing. Yeah. And I know that's so nerdy, and I still do. I still think it's so cool, the news vans with the satellite I just think that's so cool. And so when I was in high school, I wrote for the student newspaper, but I really wanted to be into TV. I think that was more interesting to me because I remember the journalism professor always saying, this is a dying medium. Print is no longer, people are going to be online, people are watching TV, that's what you're going to want to do. So then I said, okay, well, maybe I'll do that in college. Maybe I'll major in broadcast journalism. So I ended up doing that. And I kept saying, well, I'll major in this, but maybe I won't actually do it. Maybe I'll just get into PR, And I got an internship. I got the second, the third, the fourth internship. I kept doing it. And I kept saying, I think I can do this, And then I got the first job and I said, okay. And then I got the second job. I said, okay, I think I'm doing this.
Now, were you always like a yes woman? You always said yes to everything? Or was there a point in your life when you just kind of said, no, I don't think I can do that?
Yeah, I try to be the yes woman as much as I can. And I think sometimes I say yes more than I should. But, it's gotten me to some pretty cool places. So, there's nothing wrong with the word yes, I think.
Well, and you always have this smile on your face, too. Like, no matter what you do, even on the tough days, you always have this smile on your face.
Oh.
So, I mean, where does that even come from? Because I know a lot of people, you have a bad day, they just... it's just it's heartbreaking to them.
Yeah.
But I mean, is that something that was instilled in you as a kid, or your upbringing, or was that just something that you just learned to do?
That's interesting. I think that it was instilled in me. That's a good question. My mom always says, my mom was born at 7-Eleven, and my mom believes that's lucky. And my mom, we're going to order.
Yes, we're going to take a little quick break here.
I'll have the wellness salad, please. I'll have the Thai lettuce wraps. Yeah.
And I'll have the orange chicken lunch special, please. Wow, what was the options?
White or brown rice?
Brown rice.
Jimmy, I'll be checking in, guys.
All right,
you.
Jimmy, thank you. All
Now
right.
we took a little break. Yeah, he's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I love our server.
Yes. We were talking about the...
that you always have a smile on your face. And
Yes. So again, just to recap, my mom was born at 7-Eleven, and my grandmother always told my mom, good things will always happen to you because you're always going to have a positive outlook on life because you were born at 7-Eleven. And my mom has always told me that. She said, you're lucky. You are always just going to have a positive attitude, and that's just who you are. And I think there's power in that. There's power in words. Because I've always felt that. I've always felt, even if it's a negative situation, I say, well, how can I make this positive? And obviously not everything is always positive, but you try as much as you can to take the most positive out of a situation. So that's how I try to look at things, I think.
And have you had, not talking about just the news business, but just in your normal day-to-day life, have you ever had those really tough situations where you've had to just dig yourself out of it?
Yeah, I will say, throughout school, school's hard. In high school, kids are mean. People are mean.
Well, and also you were doing, you're doing school.
Yeah.
While you were working in TV news.
Yes. Well, that was in college.
Yes.
Yeah. So I was doing internships. I did internships at all the stations, almost all the stations in LA, because I wanted to end up there. That's what I wanted. And back to that whole thing where you see people out in the field and the reporters, and you watch them on TV, and you just think they have the coolest life. You just think they are just so cool. And they are. They have interesting stories to tell.
And who was your the one reporter journalist that you had that you always looked up to, that you always wanted to emulate?
Well, there are a few, I think. Dallas Raines. I love him. I grew up watching him, and I think it's cool to work in the same market as him. I still think that's super unreal. Dallas Raines, I job shadowed Conan Nolan over at KNBC when I was in high school, and I got to see how it worked for the day. And that was the first time ever that I saw how a package was put together. And as a viewer, a lot of people don't realize that what you shoot in the morning is what's on air that day. And I didn't get that. And then I finally understood that as I followed him around, and he did his interviews, and they edited his package, and then he was live, and it was very cool. So it really opened up my eyes, that situation.
So let's go back to when you're actually searching for your first job, and you already knew that you wanted to be, a journalist, wanted to work in the news business. Parents' support to this, and what was their reaction when you told them you want to be a journalist? Where they're like, honey, I think maybe you should just study law or medical.
Right,
what was their reaction to it?
Well, actually, it was the opposite. And they were really supportive. They've always been supportive. And I truly believe that I would not have been able to get through the first few years in the career without the support. Because you know how it is. You're making no money. You're living away from home. It's just the odds are kind of against you in that situation. And I think my parents, when I told them I wanted to major in journalism and go through that, they were like, okay, well, they thought it was fine. And even throughout college, I said, yeah, I'm not going to be making any money, because that's what all the professors tell you. You're not going to make any money. And so I told them, and they said, okay, well, just see if you get there, and we'll help you out. And thankfully, they were very supportive, and they've always been so supportive. There have actually been times that I've wanted to quit. And they said, no, keep going. Like, you can do it. You're good. You can do it. And so, again, I think without their support, I wouldn't still be doing this. I don't think.
Oh, man. That is so important. And I guess it depends on the person that you are. Like, in my case, I had my dad who, always supported what I did because he always had faith in me. But then, my mom was more like, maybe you should just study to be a lawyer and this and that. And it wasn't until she saw, I've been doing news for, 11 years now or so. And during that time, she saw how the community reacted to what I did. And so she just started, she started noticing that, and she started watching the news more. even though she speaks very little English, she still watched the news just to see the work I did as a news photographer, and then eventually now to digital. And she became this really supportive parent, and so now she believes in what I do. So it's I'm happy to hear that your parents were supportive from the get-go, because I think that really pushed you to where you are now.
Yeah, right.
But it wasn't an easy road getting here. I mean, you had to start. For lack of a better word, at the bottom of the totem pole.
Yeah, oh yeah, the bottom, the absolute bottom, and that was okay. And when I got the job I got started in Oregon, Bend, Oregon, the middle of nowhere, Oregon. I thought it was the coolest thing in the world. I thought, wow, I get to be on TV. I thought it was so cool. I didn't care. I didn't care that it was Market 180. I was like jazzed to be there. I was jazzed to be making $24,000 a year. I was like, oh, here I am. Yeah, it was low. But I was excited. I was so excited to be there. And then when I got my first paycheck, I said, wow, I was on TV and I made this money. I thought it was, I think my first paycheck was like $600, but I was so excited. I thought that was so cool. So yeah, the parent support though is so important, and it kind of taught me, one day when I have kids, to have faith in them whatever they want to do, because my parents both don't care about news. They care about it, but they probably would have been happy with whatever I wanted to do. And so it kind of taught me, hey, one day when I have kids, I need to support them in whatever they want to do,
So you're in Bend, Oregon.
Yes.
And I think Bend, Oregon, isn't that the same Bend, Oregon that has the last blockbuster in the world?
Yes, that's it. That's it. That I think has made Bend famous now. You see the articles on CNN about how it's the last blockbuster. I remember I passed it every day to work.
Did you ever stop and rent a movie there?
No, and I don't know why I didn't, because I love Blockbuster. I don't know why I never did.
Oh, man. Well, they have a Twitter account. I forget what it's called. I think it's called The Last Blockbuster.
I hope they don't close it. Or are they closing it?
No, I think they're going to keep it going, but it's so funny. It's so funny, the stuff that come up. I don't know who handles that account, but it's just so funny. I'm following it because every time I need a good chuckle, I just look at that account. It's incredible.
Yeah.
But, okay, so you're in Bend, Oregon.
Yes.
And that's your first job, right?
That was my first job. Yeah.
So your first official job as a journalist.
Yes.
What's going through your mind? It's your first day. What are you thinking about? I
was so nervous. I was so scared. And I thought, because it was mostly women reporters. And I thought, what are they going to think of me? They've all been doing this for so long. And it really wasn't that long. We were all starting out. But I was so nervous because I really didn't have any hands-on experience. I had watched people in my internships, but I had never done it, and I had made packages in college and done fake live shots, but I had never actually done it. So this was like my first time doing it. And it really is kind of like a 0 to 180 type of learning curve. Like you start out not knowing anything, and then 6 months later, you're doing it all yourself and you're doing a good job. So I was really nervous. Thankfully, I had met a girl who started at the same time as me and had just graduated. We're still friends to this day. And so her and I have really been able to, we talk all the time. So her and I lived together and we became really good friends. And so thankfully I had some support. But imagine, being all the way so far from home, starting a new job in a new place, and I signed a 2-year contract. So it wasn't like I could pick up and leave if I hated it. So thankfully, I liked it, but it was really different. It was different. I grew up in Southern California, so living in another state, and which got snow, we got crazy weather there, and it was definitely different. The pace of life was completely different too.
Well, and I get the feeling that you're really close to your parents.
Yes.
So how was it being away for 2 years? With the occasional visit back to California to visit your parents, but how was it being away from them for 2 years in a whole different state?
Yeah, it was okay. I thought in the beginning, it's going to be hard. I'm going to want to leave. I'm not going to like it. But I really acclimated pretty quickly. I just was immersed in the job. I worked the early morning shift for a year. So, I worked from 3 to 12. 3 a.m. to 12. And so that was kind of what I did for the first year is I just worked and learned and I remember the first time I ever did a live shot, I was like on cloud 9. I thought it was so cool. And you guys have no idea. Like the night before, they said, my boss told me, you're going to do a live shot tomorrow morning. And I was like, a live shot? Live? And I can't mess up. And I got it. And I was so nervous. And I remember, I think I cried before because I was so nervous. And I remember doing it and coming home. And I just was the happiest person in the world because my boss said, you did a good job. I probably... if I watched it back, I'd probably, just squirm from awkwardness. But, I did it. And so, and you get that feeling after you're on air. It feels good.
Oh, man. Were you living with anybody during that time, or were you living by yourself during that period of in your life?
Yeah. No, I was living with the girl that I had met, Danny. So we ended up living together for the whole 2 years. And, we had never met each other before we signed a lease.
Wow.
So our boss had said, hey, they connected us and said, hey, if you want to live with someone, it's expensive to afford it on your own. And so we got a place together, signed a lease, and we lived together for 2 years. And thankfully we got along, because I didn't know her. So we definitely took a risk.
And were you with your we won't say his name because I don't want to put him out there, but
you can. We can if you want, but
really?
Yeah.
Really? Will.
Will is his name. Yes.
So were you with Will at this time too in your life?
I was with Will. Yeah, Will and I had been together most all of college, and then we were together, and it was one of those things where I told him, it was like right before we graduated, I said, I got a job, it's far away, and I'm going to take it. And he was so supportive. He said, yeah, you got to do it, go. And so we made it work. I saw him once a month. So either I would come see him or he would come see me. We'd switch. And we made it work. I mean, it was okay. I mean, we were pretty solid. So it wasn't, I trusted him and he trusts me, so it's okay.
Yeah, no, I met Will several times.
Yes, Will loves you guys.
Well, he's an awesome guy and one of a kind person too. And yeah, so if you're listening to this podcast, Will, you need to come and hang out with us in LA.
I know. I told him I was doing this, and he said, I want to come.
But okay, so you're in band. Your 2 years are coming up. At that point, are you wondering if you're going to continue with them or if you're going to move ahead and maybe find work elsewhere?
Yeah, so at that point, I knew I wanted to come back to California. I was going to do my 2 years in Bend, and I was moving. I was out of there. So I applied I got recruited. I put my demo reel online, on YouTube, and people can find you that way. I got interviews with a lot of different stations, not in California, but I really wanted to come to California. And got offers actually in bigger markets, but I just wasn't interested. So I remember contacting Santa Barbara Jim a few times before my contract was up in Bend, and I was like, listen, I really want to come to California. I do weather, I can report. What do you have? And so we would keep in contact every few weeks or few months, and he called me and said, we have a position open. We'd like to talk about it with you if you're interested. And so I was so excited. I was like, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, well, and I remember that you had come for a visit.
Yes.
Back when I was working in Santa Barbara.
That was the first time we had met, and I think I met you too, right, Claire? Yeah, I had met both of you guys. Yeah.
And I remember I turned to Claire, and I remember telling her that, oh my gosh, this girl's going to be a hard worker. Like, I hope she ends up working here.
Yes, and you were the one that told me. You were the one that had texted me and said, hey, there's an open position. I remember that.
Yeah, and then when you actually got hired, I was like, oh, yes.
Yes.
Because at the time, I was a digital content director there at the station. And, I mean, there's only been a few people that have been like a digital content director's dream come true, and you were one of them. Like you were hardworking. You did everything that you were asked for, not only on the digital side but also on the broadcast side. But
an assignment editor, dream come true.
Well, thank you guys. That's really nice of you. I appreciate it. I try to get everything done.
Yeah, but Yeah, and that wasn't easy. I mean, you were the only reporter based out of Ventura, right?
Yes.
So, I mean, how is it now that you go from Bend, Oregon, from working with all these other folks to all of a sudden ending up working just by yourself?
Yeah, and so talk about a learning curve. So you learn so much in the first 6 months of a job. So from college to Bend was a huge learning curve, and then I felt like I learned so much more coming from Bend to Santa Barbara, because Santa Barbara, although it's a small market, does not run like a small market. It runs like a medium to large market. I mean, really, it does compete with LA. It does. And especially working out of the Ventura Bureau, where you get big stories working out of the Ventura Bureau, because that you share the same market with LA. So you're getting big stories. And I think working by myself there was such a blessing. Being able to run my own live shot, all my own gear, my own car, everything was incredible. I was so happy with that job. And I felt really good. Like at the end of the day, when I had set up my story, did the interviews, edited, did my web script, got on air, live shots, done. I felt so good. It was the same type of high. Like after you go on air, you're like, I did what I was supposed to do for the day. I checked the box. I did it. I'm done. And it feels good. It feels good to get it done. So I loved working in Ventura. And I think that one of the reasons why I was able to get a job in LA is because I did that all by myself. And even now that I work with a photographer and I always tell them, because they use the live unit. And I say, I used to do this by myself, 5 and 6 o'clock live shot. And they said, really? You did that by yourself? I said, every night, every day. 5 and 6.
Help your photog troubleshoot the live view?
I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm excited for the day that happens, because they're going to be impressed. I feel like they're going to be impressed. But it is cool to have somebody do that part for you. And there is a lot more, I think, in LA, there's a lot more. They've got more lights. They've got more, everything's more. So I'm glad that somebody can focus on that while I focus on the story. So that's good.
No, that's awesome. I mean, It's just, from going to working with somebody to just working by yourself, and you did that for almost 2 years, I want to say.
Almost 2 years.
Yeah.
Year and a half.
Yeah, and during this time, not only are you living in Ventura, but then coming back to you and Will.
Yeah.
Will is up in the Bay Area.
In the Bay Area, and he had bought a house there.
And you're in SoCal. So
right.
then, how did that work out? And just talk about that process.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are in this long distance relationship that in the end may not work out, but you persevered. So, what was the secret?
Yeah.
What was the secret sauce?
The secret, well, I don't know if there's really a secret, but we just work really well together, and we're both confident in who we are, and I think that's really important, because we're not. I'm not jealous. He's not jealous. He understands I want to focus on my career, and he's focusing on his career, and we both get it. And I think that's really important. We still see each other. When I was in Santa Barbara, we would see each other every 2 weeks. So I would drive up 5 hours, then he would drive down 5 hours. It was a lot. I mean, I would be lying if I told you it was a piece of cake and it was great. I mean, it was not fun. I mean, and I would complain, like driving up there. I'd be like, why do you live so far? I'm so annoyed, because it was really far. I spent a lot of money on gas. You spend a lot of money on gas, on plane tickets, hotels, it's a lot, but when you love someone, you do whatever you can. So we made it work. And so now that I'm making more money, we're flying. So he's still up in the Bay Area. I'm here. Eventually he'll move down here, but for now we're flying, flying back and forth. Yeah. It's easier to fly.
from the Bay Area to SoCal.
Burbank, LAX, yes.
I know, and everything in between.
Yes.
And so now your time in Santa Barbara is coming to an end.
Yes.
And now you get an offer at LA, but it was unexpected.
It was unbelievably unexpected. It was out of left field more than I could ever express. I mean, it was, Yeah, one
How
of
did that
those.
go down?
Yeah, so I knew that I wasn't going to stay in Santa Barbara for, the biggest reason being the money. I just couldn't afford to live there. And I want to be able to afford my bills. I mean, I loved working there. I really did. I have nothing really negative to say about my experience in Santa Barbara except for the money was just not livable. And that's expected in a small market. I get that. I'm not knocking them. But I also wanted to move up. I wanted to be in a bigger market, and I felt like I had kind of paid my dues in the small market, and I was ready to move on. And so I was hoping to still stay in California. Will and I had talked. I said, how would you feel about moving to San Diego, which is bigger? And he said, yeah, we can move to San Diego. But, my ultimate goal was to be in LA. But he said, well, can you get a job in the Bay Area? And I said, well, I can try to do that. So it was kind of the Bay Area or San Diego, ultimately LA. So I ended up hiring an agent, which I had heard, about 6 months out, 7 months out is when you're kind of supposed to do that. And I thought, well, an agent could probably really help me make that next jump. And within 3 days of signing with the agent, she had called me and said, I have a client who works at CBS, and she was telling me they need a meteorologist like yesterday. They need one. They need one now. And she said, I know we don't have a reel together. I know we don't have any of this stuff, but do you want to try it? They might be interested in you. And so I was like, okay, yeah. I mean, I didn't think it'd be possible, but I was like, okay, yeah, let's try it, So anyways, we put a reel together in like a day, sent it over, and I was like, I didn't get it. I mean, and in the meantime, she said, oh, well, what do you think about Sacramento? And I said, okay, well, maybe Sacramento, it was one of those things that I just was like, it just can't happen. It just won't happen, And within the span of like a week, I had gotten an interview, went for an audition, and got the job within a week. I mean, and that just doesn't, I've heard that just doesn't happen,
Which shows how talented you are.
Well, I mean, or they just needed someone so bad that they just said, well, she's decent and she's close, so great, So I was shocked, and I remember when they had offered, my agent called me, and I was at the mall with my mom, and she said, are you sitting down? And when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, what do you mean? Oh my God. And she said, they offered you the job, and I just didn't know really how to feel. Like, I wasn't happy and I wasn't upset, but I was like, I just didn't know how to feel, because I was telling myself, you're not getting that job. There's no way they want to hire you. And so she's like, you got to take it. And I said, well, what are we going to do? I'm still 6 months away. And she was like, well, let's see what we can do, and I won't get too nitty gritty into the details, but it was not pretty for a little bit. But Santa Barbara ended up letting me go. And, and they said, CBS was like, we need you to start now.
Well, yeah,
now.
Yeah, when you have an opportunity, to go, from market 124 to market number 2, or as I like to say, market number 1 on the West Coast.
Yes, I agree. I love it.
Yeah, if I was a manager, if I was a news director, I would say, man, yes, go. This is a great opportunity. I wouldn't try and hold you back.
I know, and it's unfortunate. It's the unfortunate part of the business with contracts. I think contracts are unfair, and I understand why management does it, because they need their talent. I get that. But it's just unfair, because even if you're somewhere where you want to live, you want to live in Los Angeles, things happen in 2 years, in 3 years, in 4 years. I mean, life happens, and to be contractually obligated to stay somewhere is just not fair. Things happen.
Oh yeah, there's a reason why these cell phone companies got rid of contracts.
Yes, nobody wants to sign a contract, and we are really in the only industry that, and entertainment basically is with contracts. It's just not really fair.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with contracts, But, I like to think that once the opportunity comes up where you can make a huge leap in your career, then you should be given that chance to do so.
Yeah.
Now, I understand if it was like maybe a lateral move, or maybe going to a lower market or a market the same size. But, I mean, this is from 124 to 2.
One on the West Coast.
1, yes.
1.
Number 1.
We should. I like that.
Hashtag number 1 on the West Coast.
I really like that. Yeah, it was, I'm not going to lie. I mean, it was a tough time for me because I felt like my accomplishment was not being acknowledged. And I felt just uncomfortable about it. Now, that being said, now being where I am now, a month and a half later, I am so happy. I'm so happy, being here in CBS in LA.
No, it's an awesome opportunity. And have you always been an LA girl? Like, were you born in the LA area or Southern California?
Yes, well, actually born at Cedars-Sinai in LA. So yes,
fancy.
Los Angeles, but grew up in Thousand Oaks, so Ventura County, and always been from here. I went to school in Orange County, so always been in the area, and just I love the California vibe. I love the palm trees. I love the sunshine. I love the weather.
And we have our food here.
Yes.
So if you need to move the microphone a little bit, it's all good. But
wow,
that food looks delicious.
Great, Claire.
Wow.
Yes. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, yum.
Wow.
What a spread. I wish everyone out here listening would know what we got. But
I know, I mean, I know you guys can't see at home, but Alex's dish looks, wow. What did you get again?
It's Thai lettuce wraps.
Oh, man.
I always get this when I come here.
And the chicken looks really Mediterranean style.
Yes,
it's like so nicely grilled.
Yes.
And then Claire got...
salad looks amazing. Of course.
The wellness salad. It's lemon blueberry vinaigrette.
Oh my gosh, that sounds
lemon blueberry
good.
vinaigrette.
Yeah.
And then I got the orange chicken, which is nice. It doesn't look like, it has all this batter on it. It just looks right, and brown rice with condiments on there and some vegetables. It looks very healthy. as healthy as I can make it be.
As healthy as you can make it. But hey, it's okay. It's Saturday, so it's okay.
So I'm just going to take a quick picture here. I like posting pictures on Instagram of my food.
I know, you guys are so good at that.
Oh, doesn't everybody do it?
I guess, but you guys are like ultimately good at it.
I know, yeah. And then I use this app called Snapseed, and
What's that?
It's so Google makes it, or it's run by Google, and Snapseed allows you to basically add. You can add filters and stuff, but I kind of use the basic filters that make my photos look like they were taken by a DSLR camera instead of my phone. So
that's how everyone does it.
Oh yeah, so you can have that bokeh look. So I'm just gonna move the microphone just a little bit over to the side so you can still get your voice and you don't feel impaired.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, so we're talking about from Santa Barbara to LA, and being a SoCal girl, now this is more like a homecoming to you after being away for 4 years almost.
It really is. And I'm chewing here, but it really was so unexpected and something that I thought would not happen for a long time. And did happen, and just so thrilled to be back home. And I'm living with my parents to save some money, which is great, Hopefully I can buy a house now someday, which I would never have been able to do before. So, like you were saying, I mean, you talk about a future someday, and then it happens. It happens, and it's crazy, and it's exciting, and it's just really, it's cool to see a life work out, because you think, well, maybe it will work out, maybe it won't, maybe it will, and then it does, and it's just, it's cool. It's fun. I think that dreams do come true. I know, as cheesy as that sounds, it does happen. Goals can be met and things happen. So it does happen. Life is good.
I might, if this was like a video, I might add like a little Jiminy Cricket gif, like around the corner.
I love it.
Because you're totally right. And it depends. Like, I think your attitude, your personality takes you a long way too. Not just your talents. I mean, you're very talented, but like we were talking before, you always have, no matter how tough the situation is, you always have this smile on your face, and it just makes that positivity makes a huge difference when you're trying not only to gather news but navigate through life. And so I think you're one of the folks that I know that really deserves to be where you are now.
Thank you.
And it's amazing to see you go from being somebody that's learning the ropes on how to do certain things to somebody that already knows it and has grown so much.
Thank you.
Do you feel like you've matured in the industry because of the stuff that you've gone through?
I would say yes. I think I have matured. Whether you want to or not, the industry kind of does that for you. When you stay in it, you have no choice but to. And I think that's one thing that I love about working in this industry is you are forced to learn whether you like it or not. You know what I mean? Like, you don't understand your story. Well, you better learn it fast because you're about to do a live shot on it in 3 hours. You know what I mean? Like, you don't get it. Well, you got to learn. And it forces you to learn, and a lot of people don't want to learn, but it forces you to learn your subject. It forces you to learn about society, the community, what's around you. And I mean, I never loved school. It was okay. I was okay at school. I wasn't amazing. But I think that this is a real life application that forces you to learn. And I think I'm just realizing that now. But that's why I love doing what we do, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think that was the question, but it was a statement, I guess.
No, I think you're totally on the ball with that. And I guess now that you have a different perspective in life, in the news industry, and just your everyday, goals and walks, and how you're navigating through life now that you have that knowledge in you. What's the next step? I mean, I feel like maybe you've reached your goal of where you want to be in your career.
Yeah.
But I guess now it's family time, right?
Yeah, well, that's funny.
Or what's the next step?
That you asked that, because people ask me that. Well, now that you got to LA, where network, my agent says that all the time. She says, well, where are we going to get you to network? What are we going to? And I was like, that's never really been the goal for me. I've never really, I know it's funny, but I've never wanted to live in New York City. I know everybody has dreams of living in New York City. I have no dreams of doing that. I want to be established in LA. That's what I want. I want to become Dallas Reigns. I want to be in LA, and I want to live here, and I want to have my family here. And I want to have roots here. And I think that I'm already so happy here that I can't imagine doing anything else. Although I will say, I have always had a dream to be a professor where I went to school, Chapman, in the broadcast department. So I could see maybe one day living in Orange County, maybe working freelance at CBS 2 or 3 days a week and teaching at Chapman. I would love to do that because I have so much pride for where I went to school and the department that I was in. And I just love where I was those 4 years that I was growing, and it gave me so much. So I'd like to give back and, teach kids someday to be where I am now. So.
No, yeah, it's like paying it forward. And,
yes.
And you actually attended, so Fox 11's Hal Eisner puts on this Camp News
I love Camp
for
News.
aspiring journalists every year. It's the first week of December. And you were actually a student there. Mm-hmm.
I was, which is so cool. And now I can go hopefully next year and be... This year. Yes. Right.
But how was that experience compared to what you were learning in school?
that was also really exciting because it was so hands-on. But I think the biggest thing that I took from that was the connections. Like, I loved being able to do the real life scenarios and doing stand-ups in a package and learning how to ask questions in a press conference. You know, that's important. But I think making the connections, because some of those connections that I made, I remember meeting Sid Garcia there. He's a reporter at ABC7. And I remember then meeting, and he remembered me. I remember meeting him again out in the field in Ventura on a few stories. And he remembered me. I said, hey, do you remember me from the After Camp? And formerly After Camp, now Camp News. You know, so those connections that you make, and now I work in LA, I haven't ran into him yet, but maybe at some point I will. And I think those connections that you make there are so important, and I would urge anyone to go just for the connections, really.
And do you still stay in touch with your former coworkers and colleagues at in Bend, Oregon? Yeah,
some of them I do, some of them I don't, and that's just the nature of how things work. But you know, there are a few, especially Danny. Her and I talk at least once a week, and some of them, you know, we text every once in a while. But you know how things ebb and flow.
Have you, at any point in your life, been a rebellious teen? That's funny because not really. But I mean, there had been times when I was, you know, would lie to my mom about where I was going. But didn't we all, you know, didn't everyone always lie about where they were going or what they were doing? But I never got myself into too much trouble. I mean, I was a pretty good kid. I was always kind of doing what I should be doing at the time. A busy bee?
A busy bee. I was really busy, doing a lot, yeah.
Now, because we're eating food and I'm a big food eater, so do you cook, or is Will the cook, or is it 50-50, or what do you guys do?
Yeah, Will's totally the cook. I am not really that good of a cook, and I only say that because Will's an amazing cook. So whenever I would make something, it wouldn't taste good, but whenever Will makes something, it tastes so good. For those of you who don't know Will, he won a cooking show on TV, and so he's like an incredible cook.
Oh man, we got to get him on this podcast to talk about that.
No, you should. He would do it. Claire, the booking manager, will write it down. He would love to do it, and he is the most. He's so creative when it comes to food. I have never met anyone more creative with it. Than Will.
What's his like go-to dish, or also like a dish that is your favorite that he makes?
Well, you know what he made recently that I can't get enough of, and I am not a breakfast taco type of girl, but he made these breakfast tacos that were incredible. And you know what? Why he's so good is because every ingredient in what he makes is good. Like, for instance, in these breakfast tacos, the eggs were like perfectly cooked. The tortilla was perfectly made. He made handmade tortillas.
Wow.
And everything he did was like perfectly put together. And so when you have every ingredient that's perfect, it tastes good, you know? So he's so talented when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I don't really cook, and I leave that up to him. And I always joke with him, like, someday when we live together, he's going to do all the cooking, and I'll do all the whatever, laundry or whatever else it is. But I don't want to cook, and he wants to cook, so it's great.
Oh, man. Well,
uh-oh.
Oh, we just had somebody drop something. You could probably the microphone probably picked it up. It's all good though. Nobody
Hopefully
heard.
It's not too loud.
Yeah, no injuries. We don't have to go live from here for the news. Well, are your parents good cooks, or is your mom, your dad better than the other? Like, what's the situation there?
Yeah, they're good. I wouldn't say like we're a big cooking family, but they're good. I mean, we eat out a lot. That's kind of our thing. We eat out a lot. So I would say we're more of like an eating out type of family. But my mom will cook. She'll make enchiladas sometimes. Probably not as good as your parents. But enchiladas, we'll barbecue in the summertime. Pork chops and
that's awesome.
Stuff like that. But for the most part, I would say Will's the cook. Will comes over and makes all of us dinner.
Wow. Yeah, when I was growing up, my mom would always make these traditional Mexican dishes, and Let's just say that's why I'm a few pounds over. A lot of pounds over.
I would rather have that, honestly, than be skinny.
But
I mean,
yeah, and the thing is, I'm now in this stage in my life, I'm trying to recreate some of those dishes because, as with a lot of Mexican mothers, you got your boy trying to get into the kitchen and they're cooking and they don't want you around.
Yep.
They just all right, get out.
Get out. This is my kitchen.
Exactly.
Yep.
So for a long time, growing up, I wanted to be in the kitchen to see what she was doing, but a lot of the times, now she's changed her attitude, of course.
That's
with
funny.
with my nephews. Now they're allowed in the kitchen and everything. But back then, I wasn't really allowed in the kitchen. I was just kind of getting in the way and doing all this and stuff and that. But now she's more willing to teach me things. But I did pick up some things. One of the things about me is that I'm very visual.
Yeah.
That's how I learn things. I do take some notes and do all that, but I'm very visual. How do you retain information that you learn when you go into your creative process?
I would say I'm a big preparer. I like to spend as much time as I can preparing, whether that be looking something over visually and trying to take, pictures of it in my brain. But I've always been an over preparer, and I think I will put in the time it takes to prepare just to feel comfortable. Whether it comes to work or anything else, I try to prepare as much as I can, and sometimes time doesn't allow you to, but I think my mom always says preparation is the
really good, delicious. Thank you.
She has a really good saying. I'm trying to remember it. It's preparation is the don't worry, but be prepared. It's something like that. Basically, if you're anxious or you're nervous, prepare for it, and you'll feel comfortable. And I always believe that because I always try really hard. Even, at work, I don't have to come in until a certain hour, but sometimes I come in way early because I just want to make sure that I'm comfortable,
Yeah. Well, is there something that keeps you on your toes all the time to, keep pushing the envelope, to keep doing what you're doing? Is there something that really is behind your drive to continue doing what you're doing? What's the driving force? I just think I love what I do. I think that's it. I mean, I love my job, and you got to work and you got to do a job and you have to do it 5 days a week, and you have to love what you do, and I just really, really like what we do. I find happiness in it, and I think it's bettering me as a person because, again, you're constantly learning. You're not just sitting at a desk all day, you're constantly doing things, you're learning, you're finding things out, you're being intuitive. It's just, it's fun. And I think that's what keeps me going, truly, is just that I love my job. So let's take money, wages.
Yes.
Let's just take money out of the equation.
Okay.
Let's just say you were working, everybody was working without pay. There were just money didn't exist.
Yeah.
What about your job would keep you doing that?
I think that the way that our product changes the community, that is the biggest thing that keeps me going, I think, because you realize what you do makes a difference. You know what I mean? Where as other jobs, maybe you're an assistant to somebody who makes a difference. You know what I mean? You are the main driver in someone else's life. You are changing the world. I've seen some stories I do, and somebody contacts me afterwards and says, wow, after you did that story, this changed, or I'm doing this, or I learned this. And that is it's powerful. It's really powerful. And I think I would say that's probably the main driver behind, if it wasn't money, which it's not, because let's be real. When you first start, you're not making a lot of money. So.
Oh yeah, no, that's the stage where a lot of people get discouraged. That's the stage where people that are in it for the right reasons catapult to the top, and those that aren't just kind of disappear. I mean, they either quit altogether or they just
Stay in the same place.
Stay in the same place, yeah. Now, just coming back to Santa Barbara, because I think for all of us that worked just in the last year and late 2017, we had some big major events that we really took a hold of that were so important to the community.
Yeah.
One of them being the Thomas Fire, which not only impacted Ventura County, where you were based out of, but also Santa Barbara County, which is where the mother base, I guess, was. What do you call it? The mother station?
Yeah.
The station.
Yeah.
And we were all, kind of working around the clock most days.
That was crazy.
Yeah. How... can you talk about that experience? Because that was I almost want to say one of those very rare and unique experiences that not every journalist out there is going to have a chance to experience, especially on a market this size as Santa Barbara. So what was just talk about that experience of you going through the Thomas Fire and what you had to do and what you came out of learning from that experience.
Yeah. You're right. It isn't something that many people get to experience in a lifetime, I guess. And covering something like that, not only did we do that, but then we had the mudslides, which were two insane events that had happened back to back. And I remember, I'll never forget covering the Thomas Fire. I mean, it was 2-3 weeks of nonstop fire coverage. And I learned a lot because that was not about, putting a package together and going live. I mean, that was just continuous live for days, 12-hour shifts kept going. I mean, I know you guys worked a 24-hour shift one day. I mean, yeah, that'll change you. That will change you. And that experience, was absolutely insane. I mean, having to see that devastate a community so hard was unbelievable, really.
Yeah, no, and that situation was not pleasant to be around.
No.
But it was part of your job and what you had to do.
Yeah, and you have to keep pushing in those situations because you don't want to cover it anymore. But you have to, because it's happening now. You have to. You want it to be over. You don't want it to be happening, but you don't have a choice, And I would come home from a long day of covering the fire, and I'd smell like smoke, and I'd be dusty and dirty, and I'd be crying, and my boyfriend would say, well, can't you just call in sick? And I was like, no, I can't call in sick. I can't. Because what are they going to do? Somebody needs to cover it, and I have to be there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, at this point, all the ego that
everything is
it gets thrown out the window, and you're just doing it because you feel the drive, the
obligation
need
to tell the people what's going on. Exactly.
And I think that is one of the traits that a real journalist has, that drive to tell the story that needs to be told.
Yes, I agree.
Regardless of whether you're
dirty and
exactly. And those days are really emotional. I mean, you said that you would just come home exhausted, you would cry. I mean, it's happened to all of us. I mean, I remember I think it was 2013 when the Isla Vista shooting happened.
Yeah.
And 2014, Claire's my fact checker here. But the Isla Vista shooting was I was the first news photographer there on scene.
I love that story of you. Yeah.
And so I saw the devastation. Yeah. And I tried holding it together because at some point, you see devastation and you have to just be that professional you. I mean, you're still human. You're gonna feel things.
Yes.
But you have an obligation to tell the story. And so there were times, I think about maybe 5 days passed after that shooting when I just completely broke down. and it was in the car. It was I was with my reporter and good friend John Palmentary, and I just broke down because I couldn't handle it anymore. That was, some of these events, not everybody will ever have a chance to witness them in their lives. But like you said, it does change you.
It does.
And how did you get changed on what you had to experience and go through? How did you grow, or how did you change from how you were before these events happened?
Yeah.
To after?
Well, I think it taught me to be resilient, and it taught me to work as a team. I think that was a really big thing that I learned was working as a news team, and it just taught me about community. Really, I mean, it taught me that we are all dealing with the same things. I mean, I think it hit me the most when, I saw homes burning in the Thomas Fire, and then 6 months, 8 months later, the Woolsey Fire happened, and my parents evacuated from our home in Thousand Oaks because the fire was coming up to our doorstep. And I was, obviously I felt a lot of sympathy during the Thomas Fire, but then when it happens to you, then you feel another wave of it. And you think, oh, wow, that's really what they went through. Oh, my gosh, And I think it just teaches you that we're all the same. We all go through the same things. And I think it helps me in my reporting. Really, I think it does. Because you need, when you're covering a story, you need to feel what they're feeling. Because you need to report that to the public. So you need to kind of embody whatever your subject is feeling at that point. So I think that's kind of also what it taught me.
Now, one of the things I like ending the podcast with is what your biggest pet peeve is. So what is Alex Biston's biggest pet peeve?
Oh, wow. That might be the hardest question of the whole podcast. Okay, I thought about it. I think people that come off disingenuous, that bothers me. Maybe not that come off, but just are disingenuous. I feel like I can read people really well, and I feel like I can react off of someone's energy, and I think I know when someone is not being genuine. That's why I like you guys so much. You guys are so genuine and great people, just amazing people to be with. And I'm not just saying it, I believe it. And I want to surround myself with positive, good people. And that's kind of what life is all about, surrounding yourself with people who are important and good and do good things, do good work. And that's you guys, for sure.
Well, thank you.
Of course.
That just melted my heart.
Oh, I mean it. And I'm so happy to be a guest on your podcast.
Thanks, Alex.
Of course.
All right, we'll enjoy the rest of our lunch here. And, this is delicious.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So, better finish before we all get hangry.
I know. That's so funny.
And that was Alex Biston. I hope you enjoyed that interview as I did. And again, I want to thank the Cheesecake Factory for being so patient with us as we recorded this podcast. Our server was amazing. And if you want to follow Alex on social media, she's on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So just look for Alex Biston or Alex Biston TV, and you'll be able to follow her on those social media channels. Again, I want to thank her for taking some time out of her schedule to sit down with me for this chat. Send your comments and questions to hangrymexicanpodcast@gmail.com, and we'll read some of those responses on the show. And if you loved this episode and you really like this podcast, please rate it positively and subscribe to it. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. Spotify, TuneIn, Google Music, Apple Podcast, etc. We're all over the place. So just find us, look for the Hangry Mexican. And again, until next time, good night and good luck.